Well, non-traditional culture, sort of more modern thinking says, you know what? The big problem is religion. Get rid of religion. If you really want to find your way back to happiness and contentment, religion just gets in the way. So cast it aside. Forget all the rules. Forget traditional morality. Be yourself. Find fulfillment in this world. I read last week, a memoir. And the memoir was called The Bassoon King. And it was written by Rainn Wilson. You may not know that name, but you might know the name Dwight Schrute. Okay, Dwight Schrute was a character on The Office. And he wrote, and the memoir was really not about his time on The Office. It was about really his spiritual journey. And he talked about this restlessness that he had and this longing to be happy. And he talked about trying to fill that longing with, well, he tried women, he tried addictions, and he thought his career would make him happy. And he writes that as he became more and more successful, he was actually making it as an actor. He was finding this fulfillment and this happiness. And then he says this, he writes this, I never could have dreamed I would be where I was. New York City, working as a professional actor, and yet, why wasn't I happy? You set a goal, your life's dream, you pursue it, and then you become happy. Isn't that how it's supposed to work? But I would wake up in the middle of the night deeply, deeply sad, alienated, disconnected, disconsolate. Here's someone where the narrative is, this is someone who should have had every happiness in the world. And yet you hear the words that he uses, sad, alienated, disconsolate. Try to do things your own way. Try to find happiness and fulfillment on your own terms. It leaves you empty. Well, some will say, well, you know what? Of course, you need religion. You need to go back to keeping the rules. You need to go back to traditional morality. Some of you may have been raised in a home like that where you're taught that if you really want to find happiness, you follow God's rules. And that's it. Nothing more. Just be a good person. Go back to The View for a moment. Raven-Symoné this time, also a guest or a host on The View, and they were talking about religion, and she says, well, basically all religions teach the same thing. They teach you got to be a good person. That's pretty common, right? If you want to find happiness, be a good person. That's what religion teaches. You know what? That doesn't work either. Emily Armstrong, not much to say about her in terms of background stuff, but her story was told in a recent issue of Christianity Today, her testimony. And she was one of these people raised in a traditional home, and she was taught that performance is everything. Work hard, succeed, rise to the top. And she says, for a lot of things that worked really well. She became very highly successful in her career and education. But she still felt this emptiness, so she went back to religion. She went to the Baha'i faith. And being this performance-driven person, this person that's always motivated to succeed and rise to the top, she thought, no problem, I'll make it. But in her story, she says, I quickly found myself falling short of its requirements. I struggled to pray the long, obligatory morning prayer. I skipped ceremonial washings because I didn't understand how to perform them. All her performance in the world left her feeling something was really missing. How do we get back? How do we solve this dilemma? Well, our passage offers us clues, foreshadowings. And actually, there are quite a number of them. We're only going to look at two of them this morning. And I want to draw your attention to them. If you have your Bibles open, look at verse 14. In verse 14, you notice what God says. Now he's speaking. He's first speaking to the serpent. And he says, cursed are you above all the livestock. Now, before we even go any further with that, I want you to notice something different. When God speaks to the man and to the woman, he doesn't curse them directly. He curses the ground. He says that they will suffer the effects of sin, right? Adam and Eve are under the curse, but when God speaks to the serpent, he says something different. He says, cursed are you. The judgment will rest on you. Now that's significant. And we have to remember that God isn't talking so much to an actual species of an animal like the serpent from a kingdom class, phylum species or whatever. He's actually, remember, Satan, the serpent here is the evil one, the author of evil, Satan himself. And God is saying to Satan, are and will remain under judgment. You will be cursed. for eternity. That's different than what he says to Adam and Eve. And then he goes on and he says, you will eat dust all the days of your life. You'll crawl on your belly. Now we might hear that and say that sounds like a legend, like how the serpent lost his legs or something like that. But really what those are metaphors, or what that is, that's imagery of defeat. Right? We even say it today, eat my dust. Same idea. God is saying to Satan, you are going down to defeat. You will not be victorious. You, Satan, you, the author of evil, are going down. You will be conquered. And we read more of that in the second part of verse 15, where God says, the offspring of the woman will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. This is the very first proclamation of the gospel in the Bible, the very first hint. Now, we don't get it all fleshed out here, we just get the hint that one day Satan will be crushed. The evil one will be utterly destroyed. Right? God will not allow the evil one to win. Now, the second hint. Looking near the end of our text, it's where God banishes them from the garden, and in verse 24 we read that he places on the east side of the garden cherubim and a flaming sword, flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. Now, believe it or not, that's actually a hint that tells us how we get back. Because it shows us how it's impossible to get back. Let me explain. The angel with the sword flashing back and forth is really saying the only way back to the presence of God, the only way back to the sanctuary, the only way back to paradise is to go through the sword. It's to go through death. The only way back to the sword is through death. You can't show up at the angel and say, hey, look at all these